And the answer, of course, is it depends on how you use it. It's going to depend on how fast the educational institutions adapt to this. And that goes back to the technology fallacy, right? Because there's a really nice graph in there that holds up, I think, really well that says technologies move faster than individuals can adopt it. Individuals move faster than organizations can adapt to it. And organizations move more quickly than public policy can assimilate it. And so the question is, can the organizations change fast enough to accommodate this?
If you were consulting with a company, if they haven't adopted AI yet, what is step 1 or 2? Hello, my AI overwhelmed friends. How the heck are we doing? Now, not all of you are AI overwhelmed because many of you may not even use AI. I don't know, but I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of you do not, but there are many, many listening who do, especially those of you in the workplace. If you feel like you're being told to use AI, fear AI, somehow not paste the wrong thing into AI all before lunch, this episode's for you, because the AI story isn't just about technology. It's about people, management, incentives. Employees are being pushed to use AI, as they probably should, but often without clear guidance on what better work looks like with AI. Managers are being asked to lead a transformation they may not fully understand yet. Can't blame them. Things are moving fast. And companies are trying to move just as fast while also protecting data, jobs, morale. And there's a similar tension showing up in higher education. The internet already made information instantly available, but AI is different. It can explain and summarize and draft and code and tutor and simulate understanding. So what happens to learning when artificial intelligence is instantly available? My guest is here to help me with all of this, and you. He's Professor Jerry Kane. Jerry is the C. Herman and Mary Virginia Terry Chair in Business Administration and Professor of Management Information Systems at the University of Georgia's Terry College of Business. He's also the former Professor of Information Systems at Boston College Carroll School of Management. He has also served as a visiting scholar at Harvard Business School, guest editor at MIT Sloan Management Review, and a senior editor at NMIS Quarterly. Jerry's research explores the role of digital technologies in business strategy, org culture, and talent development, with a particular focus on how people and orgs respond to digital disruption. And here we are. He is also the author of 2 books on that topic, The Technology Fallacy and The Transformation Myth, Leading Your Organization Through Uncertain Times. I had Jerry on the podcast previously to discuss the research behind the technology fallacy some years ago. This time I wanted to talk to him because he sits in both worlds, education and business. And while he studies how companies adapt to digital transformation, he's also a professor watching AI hit higher education in real time in his classroom with students right now. So how are students using AI? Are they learning more or outsourcing the very struggle that helps them think? What's he seeing in the workplace? Are employees being helped, overwhelmed, quietly left to figure it out on their own, or maybe all of the above? Are companies using AI to empower, augment people, or are they just looking for a better word for cost cutting? And underneath all of it for me is this bigger question: how do people and organizations adapt when a tech like AI is moving faster than the people and the culture around it? So this conversation is my attempt to cut through the hype, the forced optimism, and the doomerism, and hopefully ask more useful questions. What is AI really doing to how we learn, how we work, and how do we prepare people for what comes next? So on the show, we cover all of this. We talk about everything to what makes a good manager from a standpoint of adopting AI. We talk about why he says that this is one of the most remarkable semesters of his 20-year career teaching, what Jerry is seeing in recent job placement stats, and a ton more. I think everyone needs to listen to what Jerry Kane says. He gives a clear-eyed field report from inside education and business while AI is hitting both of these at once. So it's very unique. So without further ado, here's Professor Gerald Kane. Good morning.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. I wanted to make sure we talk sooner rather than later. So,
Well, if you have me on later too, I'll probably have a whole new set of things to say. Things
I
are
know
changing
it's
so quickly.
It's so crazy. But you were a minister, a Methodist minister first?
Yes.
Okay. We got to have another podcast
Yes.
separate because it's rare that I run into that kind of
Yep.
change. Like
Now, technically, my official appointment in the Methodist Church is to the University of Georgia, studying the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Okay. This is why I booked earlier because AI is a rabbit hole.
Yes.
Jerry, welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be back.
It's been a while. But you switched schools. Is that right?
Yes. I'm now at University of Georgia.
Okay. Then tell me what you're doing in the space when you wrote the Tech Fallacy when I had you on then. But are you still doing research in this regard?
Yes. I've been thinking about dusting off that survey and rerunning it in the age of AI. I'm working with an organization called the Fallacy Institute, which is a research organization for credit unions. And I'm in charge of their Design for Digital Center of Excellence. So I am still doing the same stuff. It's just a little more focused than in the credit union industry.
That's interesting because I used to work in a banking research firm specifically focused on credit unions.
Interesting. And I'm doing a lot of executive education too. So that's one thing that UGA has that Boston College didn't, a strong exec ed presence. So I am working with a number of companies hands-on and on their AI efforts.
So let's dive into it.
Yes.
You are uniquely positioned, Jerry, when it comes to AI. AI is hitting these two social and economic institutions, education and the workforce. You span both of these worlds. You wrote the book, The Tech Fallacy, and did research on the, impact of digital innovation in the workforce. And now here we are with the ultimate form of that. It has its own classification, but I'm just going to use it as digital transformation. So,
yes, absolutely.
First of all, so you're a professor watching AI arrive in higher ed in real time.
Not just watching, I'm helping make it happen. So I'm deeply involved in it.
And you spent your career studying why organizations fail at digital transformation. So here we are with this amalgam. What's happening in the university, if you can touch on it from the organization itself as to how it sees it, how it's using it or not, and then on the student side.
So I'm in a fairly unique position in that I changed from Boston College to University of Georgia in 2022. Literally, the first semester I was teaching at Georgia, ChatGPT 3.5 came out, or I think that was the right model, and took the world by storm. And so I was fortunate to be sort of working in this area. And at first I thought, because most of my deliverables in my class are written like blogs, and I said, oh no, am I going to have to completely change the way I teach? And then I did some sample blogs in GPT 3.5 and I realized it was pretty bad. You could sniff out ChatGPT content really quickly. It was not nearly as sophisticated as it is today, and we didn't know how to use it. So my first time through, I gave students the option to use it, and they needed to report back if they chose to report how they used it if they did. And they actually reported it was a lot more work to use AI for this because they had to do all the validation and they had to check and the references. And it was a ton of work. Second time through, I forced them to use generative AI and report back on it. And then you could see definitely some meaningful progress over the course of the semester. First sets of blog posts were terrible. And then over the course of the semester, they got gradually better as they learned from each other how to use the tool. This past semester has been a step change in capabilities amongst my students. It's probably been the most remarkable semester I've ever taught as a professor, and that goes back 20 years. Same deliverable, same format, same structure. Out of the gate, my students are vibe coding apps for their projects. So they are building things. They are telling other students how they're done. By the end of the semester, I had one student who has epilepsy build I'd have to go look at the number, 6-agent network with 27 sub-agents to interact with his Whoop device to monitor his epilepsy condition and help him manage it. Another student had gone to a fashion website that she had used, a startup, and got on with the phone with one of their product managers, she vibe coded a feature for them in a Google Chrome plugin. So she didn't have access to anything of something she wanted to see on the site, sent it back to them. CEO called her up. They had some conversations with engineers and they ended up offering her a job on the spot because the capabilities have just gone crazy. And if the students are equipped to use these, we're off to the races now. I'm very excited about the future and what's possible. I think there's going to be a ton of disruption. So all that to say is I've been hands-on with it. Fortunately, when I moved to UGA, I became a department head. I cast this vision in 2022 for the department. I said, I have this feeling AI is going to be big. Let's make that our departmental identity. So we've actually hired 8 new people since I came. I was hire number 22. Now we're at 32. So I guess more than 8. So now 10, all AI oriented. And so we have sort of a super user group here where we're sharing ideas. We're launching projects, launching new classes. So we now have an undergraduate certificate in business and artificial intelligence with, I think, 6 new electives: agentic AI, generative AI, chatbots, business and societal impacts. They have to learn Python as well as some vibe coding stuff. Now, I'm also on our school's AI task force, and we did a survey. And that's when I realized just how far ahead we were than the rest of the business school. So if you looked at our faculty's AI literacy, we were a factor of 2 above everybody else. And I think the business school is even further ahead than the rest of the university. So like most organizations, you have the power users that are really sort of pushing the envelope of what's possible. You have daily users, I would say, who are using it for some basic tasks. And then I still say 70% of the people out there have no idea what's happening or they hear about AI. They don't know how to use it beyond basic tasks and don't really have a concept of the changes that are coming.
You said it's been remarkable and one of the most exciting times for you. You read studies, MIT among others, and obviously these are controlled groups, and they're talking about outsourcing thinking. So
yeah,
we have universities now that their job is to impart knowledge, make people more intelligent. Now we have a thing that's on demand, ubiquitous, that is personified intelligence at a student's fingertips. And what you're saying is this thing it sounds like it's augmenting the learning process of students so that they go from passive receivers to creators.
When it is used and taught correctly.
So everything you're telling me is exciting and positive and fantastic, and I want to go to your school. By the way, it sounds like the institution there has embraced this. They're leaning into it.
Yes and no. So they said, which give them credit, the policy was that all faculty had to declare what the AI policy was in their class. They didn't set policy, they had to declare it. And so most faculty just said, okay, the policy is you can't use it. Our department was, and not even everybody in our department, but I think at this point, everybody has embraced it, said, okay, you can use it. And in fact, you have to use it. And here are the parameters around which you're going to use it. And here are the rules of the road.
Because you're preparing people for the workplace, right?
Yes. I'm not sure the workplace is ready for them yet. But
well, here's the tension that I really wanted to tee up. And maybe you can just hammer on this or tell me where you are. So we have this tension where if a university says you can't use it because you got to know how to think. And then we have workplaces saying, hey, we only want to hire people that are AI native to help us get to the next level, right? Is that?
Yes. Except there's a third tension I hear. Organizations want this, but we also don't want to pay for the tools and we only want to pay for Microsoft Copilot. And we're not going to equip them with the latest and greatest. So my students are coming out using very sophisticated applications of, say, agentic AI, Claude Cowork, Open AI Codex. And most organizations, I think we're seeing a shift very quickly, really even in the last, since February, when Anthropic saw this massive increase in corporate adoption. So much so they're having trouble keeping up with it. So I actually have my students. So employers say they want this, but are they providing the right tools? I tell my students, when you are deciding what job to take, make sure the AI policies is part of your decision process. Because if you go work for a company that won't sanction you using it, are you going to be able to continue growing in your skill set? Or are you going to be left behind? And some of them are starting to question, should I go to Bain Consulting? Is that going to help me grow? Like premier top-notch consulting firm that would have been the plum of anybody's job hunt in the fall. Now students are saying, should I take this job or should I go find a more AI native company? And I said, don't leave Bain. Help them figure it out. You're going to have the skills that they need, and go tell people the skills you have so they can leverage it appropriately.
Wow. This is so surprising. I mean, in a good way. Now, I'm getting your section of the world. So
Yep.
because I'm so curious, we're into the workplace now. So we could keep going because I'm talking about a large organization now that can't even hint. I promise them it.
Yeah.
They are having all kind of trouble because I know somebody who's consulting, and the employees are having problems because the incentives around using AI, they're getting mixed signals. Like, okay, we want you to use it. They're pushing. But then the employees are performative. They're just showing, hey, I have this prompt or whatever. They're not, it doesn't seem to be tied to a result, right?
Correct.
So it's really weird. And it's guardrail. They can only use this kind of this particular firewalled AI. They can't use other tools. And it just seems like a freaking mess.
It is.
Okay. So that is something you're seeing broadly. It's not just
because, I mean, yes, it's a mess. Let's give people some grace.
I mean,
this has all happened since February.
It's a hurricane. It's a hurricane.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we haven't adapted to 2022, 2023, whenever ChatGPT burst on the mainstream. We're certainly not prepared for what's happening now, but it's to the point, like I have a friend looking for a job, very experienced technical project manager, just got laid off. Companies are going to want to hire him. He asked me if I'd help him network. I said, no, I'm going to teach you Claude Code because you don't need companies. You can do this. It can so supercharge you. I think you can make far more money going your own. And he's going to split the difference, get a day job and sort of do this continue developing that in his spare time. I don't remember what got me down that road, but it's really hard to know what the right answer is.
Got it. Now I want to explore that further, but let me back up before we leave education, because when it comes to young people, myself being older at this point, but I've had this conversation and I want your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
With many, many people, and they have the same opinion. And I just talked to a friend yesterday about it. I said, look, I think for us older gentlemen, this is a boon. We're loving it because we have a lot of experience behind us that can inform what we're seeing from an output from an AI. And we're treating it as an assistant, an employee, and no, that's not right. Whatever. We're not outsourcing thinking. We are brainstorming, and it's a kind of feedback mechanism. It's fantastic. And I said, my only worry, and let me ask you, are you worried? My only worry is for the very young who grow up with this tool. If they don't have the experience, the intuition, the whole 9 yards, the background, what is going to become of their thinking? Yep. Will they be hampered or handicapped in some way because they don't have to go through a failure process to learn something? And what's your opinion, Jerry?
Well, absolutely. I talk about this all the time. So the good news is we've been having this conversation about technology since Socrates. Socrates lamented the dawn of the written language because he said it was going to deteriorate people's memory and they weren't going to have to remember because they could write things down. And you know what? He was right. But there turned out to be a whole lot more benefits to writing things down than drawbacks. So we don't remember as much because I can write them down.
I've gone back and used the calculator for that example, but I haven't gone all the way back.
It's funny. There's a guy named Nick Carr who used to write at Harvard Business Review. I saw a piece of his in the Wall Street Journal, who has a piece in 2008. He also had a book asking the same called The Shallows, also asking the same question about Google. Is Google making us stupid? Is the title of the article in The Atlantic.
Yeah, the internet.
So we've been having that. So it's not unusual. And the answer, of course, is it depends on how you use it. And it's going to depend on how fast the educational institutions adapt to this. And that's going to be the real challenge. And that goes back to the technology fallacy, right? Because, there's a really nice graph in there that holds up, I think, really well that says technologies move faster than individuals can adopt it. Individuals move faster than organizations can adapt to it. And organizations move more quickly than public policy can assimilate it. And so the question is, can the organizations change fast enough to accommodate this? I've seen it supercharged my students' learning. I do also think there's a risk of students who come in, and when you can complete an assessment and a project in 30 seconds using ChatGPT that was supposed to take you an hour, of course students are going to use ChatGPT for that. It's a rational choice. But critical thinking is still going to be important. Some of the base skills are still going to be important. What we're trying to get to, at least for our educational model, is spending the first half of the semester asking students not to use generative AI so they learn the basics of, say, SQL and of Python and of some of the basic technical skills. And then the second half, we show them how to supercharge it using various AI tools. And so it's this, like, here's the basics you need to know. And what's going to happen if students don't learn the basics, they're not going to be able to do the second part of the semester. So we need to structure our deliverables in a way. And that's where I think educational institutions aren't adapting. They're not changing their deliverables. They're still doing take-home tests.
They're going to break. They're going to break.
Well, they're broken. It's done.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and you're way more authoritative than I am just because of where you sit. And this is interesting because I think it was an MIT study. I just read this case study where they had the students do an essay. One was they had to either only use ChatGPT. Yep. One was a combination of do some work without it first, and then you can use it later. And then the other was just your brain, right? Just no tools, no internet, nothing. And the ones that were tasked to just use ChatGPT from the start fared worse in recall, what have you. But the ones that used it later did well in recall and learning and all that. So that makes your point, right? That use it, but where in that
use it critically and also audit its outputs. If you just do a simple prompt, like I don't think I do anything in generative AI these days that doesn't involve at least 6 steps. Iterate on this. How do I improve this? Can you change the voice? What about this? We missed this part. And now I don't know how much you're paying attention to. I'm obsessed with harness engineering. So, 2 years ago,
look, I have AI psychosis. I've down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, me too.
Stop. I'm iterating, so I've got to pull back. So sorry.
I'm the same way. It's like, but with the harness engineering stuff, I'm doing a lot of meta reflection about how thinking actually happens, because now you can structure like Claude projects to embed my thinking, my previous speech patterns, and so, but it's causing me to do reflect, like what is my voice? What are the topics I'm interested in? And it can help me. Like I had Claude interview me this past weekend gave me 15 questions on my perspective on digital transformation. And they were hard questions, and I really had to think. And it's that sort of usage that's really, it is this thought partner. It's pushing me to new levels. Now, the skill now, I think, is how do you keep from spinning your wheels? And that's what I'm trying to take a step back and do things a little slower. I now have Claude Max and ChatGPT Pro accounts, so I'm spending hundreds of dollars a month on these tools.
I've got 3 that I'm actually doing evals between them.
Absolutely.
But I feel like if I'm not Claude, and Claude just crapped out on me, I'm like, gosh, they need more data centers.
That's why I went to Max. So I do the $200 a month Claude. And now I feel like if I'm not running 4 things at once, I'm wasting compute.
Let's start a support group. We need a support group. I'm Larry Weeks.
Yes, exactly.
Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Okay. I was talking, again, this conversation I had. I said, I'm going to talk to Gerald Kane about education. And we both agreed that, we 4-year degrees, they've got to compress to 2.
Yes.
I said, I think education system may fight this just because of the incentives. But I said,
you think?
I said, the personalization is going to be phenomenal with AI. Instead of incentivizing for certificate, we need incentivize to learning and then test the learning. He said, that's not going to scale. I said, it can with AI. You can have someone, you can test a student with AI. Do you think that's where things are going, where you can personalize information by testing and also the learning based on, a student? There's some students that are just brilliant out of the gate, right?
Yep. I agree and disagree. I think the answer is continuing education, not compressing the 4-year degree, making sure universities because nobody knows enough about AI right now. It's my full-time job to keep up with it, and I can't keep up with it. I can only imagine what somebody is feeling whose job, it's not their full-time job. There's no way. And so every worker out there needs training in this area. Every company needs to upskill. And that's, I think, where people need to, where universities need to step in, is meeting those needs. Because I do think, taking a step back, and maybe I'm a little bit naive, may not be the right term, but Pollyanna-ish. I do think college teaches you more than just content. It teaches you how to adult. And I worry I worry if you don't have that sandbox for students to screw up before they get into the workplace. I don't think an 18-year-old is ready to sort of work in today's corporate America. I think they've got some skills that corporations want. I don't think most of them are mature. Some are, and colleges help with that maturity in addition to teaching them the content. So I don't want to get rid of 4-year degrees, but what are they like? I'm encouraging my son to work for a startup while he's doing college, because he has, he can do agentic AI. We're going to be building out an OpenClaw server this summer, so he can learn how to do this stuff. He's way better at Python than I am, and he just took a data class. So he's got skills. So if anybody's looking for an intern, give me a call. I'll be happy to hook you up. But
that'll be in the resource link.
Exactly. So it's just about, and he can teach himself this stuff, but he's also not mature enough. He can't remember always to brush his teeth in the morning and all that sort of stuff that are essential for.
By the way, kids are not going to reiterations of what they want to do. I mean, if you get a degree, and that'll change.
Yes. So continuing education is the key, so that we can provide it. And some of this can be self-taught. Some of it is like, I'm teaching myself harness engineering. Incidentally, a bit of an aside, one thing I have moved to this year is I do not assign textbooks or external reading anymore. I create all of the readings for my class using deep research in Claude. So all of the content, because what was happening is when you're teaching about AI, either the articles are very foundational and have good sort of theoretical components and they're outdated, or they're very up to date and miss that fundamental stuff.
You mean when you're teaching about AI, you're giving the reading assignments coming from the research you're doing using AI? Is that
no? So I will go into deep. I mean, yes and no. So I'm now working on, for my executive MBAs, a 6-module set on digital technology and transformation. And even rather than assigning them my book, I have AI do, first, give me a 20-page white paper on an AI primer, then about change management, and then and so I have 6 different 20-page, that's custom. Not only custom
and
to
up
the
to
time, it's up to date. And then I actually, when I do executives, particularly if I go into companies, I will ask it to research I just did this yesterday. I can't tell you who it was from. I actually had deep research the company and then said, customize this content to this company's situation. What was really interesting is AI predicted or suggested 6 possible use cases for the company. And the one that the employees picked as the most useful was also the one that AI suggested was the most useful, which I was just blown away by. So that radical customization, and not just the company, I then uploaded the list of employee roles of the students, and it was very operations heavy. So it did a very operations heavy treatment of it. I still want to get better at it.
What a great use case. Yeah. I didn't even
I'm hooked.
Yes. Now I'm thinking, what textbook, skill-based textbooks are going to
textbooks
not be used anymore.
Yeah. But see, now what's interesting though, is you need me. People could do this on their own, but you need me to go through the textbook and say, this is not accurate. This is not good.
Curation is a skill.
Curation, yeah. So you need that expertise to know because it can create really bad textbooks. And you need someone to say, okay, what about this topic? You're spending too much time on this. Or what I end up spending a lot of time, it'll quote some random study on AI, and I say, I know that study, it's not good. Be sure not to include that because the methodology is flawed.
To me, this is the alchemy. This is the goal where you have experience and expertise over years. Now with access to the world's, that's not the internet, but this this.
Yeah.
You can talk to knowledge now
Yep.
and have access to the corpus of human history. But because of your experience, you can curate. You're getting the best out of this.
Yes.
This is where.
And I'll tell you, so for education, I said this was a really remarkable semester. The last day of class, this is the first time this has ever happened to me. I had a line of 15 students waiting to shake my hand to thank me for the class. I've gotten at least 5 handwritten thank you notes from students just asking them, telling me how important the class had been and thanking me for it. Like, that has never happened to me in 20 years of teaching. So there's a sense that they realize what they're now capable of, and it's supercharging them. I half jokingly said to them, if I were smarter, I would start a consulting business with all 40 of you guys. And we could make a ton of money together because you guys have the knowledge that companies need. And if you, just like my student that got the job, they weren't hiring her for the app. They were hiring her for her thought process, like how she approached the problem.
Energy, the vigor.
Absolutely. And the insight to say, why are we doing it this way and not this way?
Wow, this is surprising. But tell me, damn, it's hard to leave this education piece. But
yeah,
I have some friends who have kids in the creative space, and they are refusing to use AI on principle. Are you seeing that?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Okay. So
some of them are refusing on environmental grounds, which I think is sort of, I'm not as sure about. It's certainly an environmental cost. I think all the incentives are aligned for companies to get better at this and to make the environmental cost lower. The artist types, that's, I actually had one of my students, actually my first student at Boston College from 2006, went to work for Google, and she left after 3 years to become an artist. And now she's in the Whitney Museum in New York. And her argument is art is needed because AI is going to make everybody average. Artists need to figure out how to add value above and beyond that, how to be more creative above that art. So I still think for artists, I think some people do it out of laziness. I do think amongst younger people, though, there's a lot of pushback because of job fears, environmental costs. It is biased. So there's some flaws to AI that I think are manageable, but I don't think the solution is to refuse to use it. I think the solution is to use it ethically and don't outsource your brain, but augment your brain. Don't outsource your creativity, but augment your creativity and model that. Don't just do the protests side. Model what appropriate and powerful and creative AI use is. That's what I would rather see the artists and the creatives do.
All right, let's talk about the workplace with AI and everything that's happening. What are you seeing inside of companies right now that the headlines are missing? Is there a real divide forming between the companies that are using AI and the ones that aren't, or is it forming somewhere else entirely?
The good and the bad is I have a lot of exposure to companies. Now that I'm in a state school in Georgia, I have and Atlanta's an amazing business city, but I tend to have windows into Atlanta companies more so than now. It's got more Fortune 500 headquarters than any other city in the US. So it's a good place to be. So I may be biased. Like I'm not as plugged into San Francisco as I once was. My sense is a lot of the San Francisco tech companies are getting it because they're also ripe for that. Like when you're doing digital products, that's exactly what this is good for.
Yeah, they're the first movers usually.
Yes. Other companies are getting there. I'm working with one company that I'd done an exec ed for them 3 years, and they finally listened to me. So that, I've always said the solution is to start with what I call the coalition of the willing. Find 30 people that want to learn more about this, get them together on a regular basis, give them the tools, give them the training, and let them figure it out, and then share those best practices across the organization. And so they've at least started a first cohort of that. I have an email out asking how it's going, but where the tools. So we're going to get back to education because it's still all education, right? It's how do we educate companies to use these things, and how do they disseminate those practices? One thing I've done in my class this semester is we do a section of the course on current events in AI in business. So we spend 45 minutes discussing them. Well, I started recording them on Zoom, taking those transcripts of the discussion, uploading it to AI, saying, turn it into an engaging LinkedIn post for a general business audience. And I've been sharing that And they've been great. Very sophisticated AI people are telling me how much they're enjoying those posts. So is it AI generated? It's AI packaged, but we're doing the original thought. We're doing the creativity. So if they started, one thing I'm going to encourage these groups to do, start recording your interactions, start recording your discussions about AI and share them with the company. That's how you scale it. I have another company I'm working with that they have been pretty proactive about using AI in their business processes to do proposals and things like that. The owner of that company is considering spinning that side off to a whole new business. The AI workflows that he's developed, because it gets them a proposal used to take, a week. Now it takes an hour, and that just makes you more competitive. So I think the companies that can figure it out, and there's just a lot of variation out there and a lot of variation within companies. I think you have some, and the real challenge is going back to the executive problem. When companies don't provide their employees with adequate tools, employees are going outside and using shadow AI, using customer grade tools for work purposes. I saw a study, it's a little older now, but ChatGPT found that 30% of all ChatGPT uses was for work purposes. And so that means a good portion of people are using generative AI that they pay for themselves. And that's a bad environment. That's a bad, IT will go apoplectic. But then I'm working with credit unions and they're doing experiments. This research organization I'm working with, they're doing experiments on agentic AI. Like, how do we put agentic AI into our workflows? So you've just got a whole mix.
Yeah, because I didn't, when I was thinking about talking to him, like, well, this is going to be hard to talk about just because businesses are so different and they do different things.
Yes.
And some of them will be ripe and can easily use AI or can adopt it maybe faster than some other organizations, depending on what they do. Credit unions is a perfect example because right off the top, I'm thinking there's so many use cases. Customer support. Let's say, we can have a chat that can route that call faster, better, also answer questions before you can get somebody, whatever. I'm just thinking off the top of me. Plus, they have a ton of data, financial data, that they can create products and derivatives of products, financial products with AI. So it just seems ripe for it. And
but where I'm pushing the credit unions is, how do you do this without starting to look like the big banks? Because you're going to lose that battle. So so I think the title of my blog post was Going Digital Without Losing Distinction. What makes credit unions, their competitive advantage is the relationship with the customers. So I say the human touch, which I think AI can help with, but don't make sure you're thinking about AI not to just be more efficient, but how can you strengthen your can you strengthen that relationship with customers?
Because I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Do you think companies are focused on the wrong thing? Because tell me what they're focused on. Are they looking at AI to say, I want to be more efficient, which means less employees or replace employees? That doesn't mean it. I'm saying you could take that thread and lead to that outcome.
Of course.
Where I think it should be is augmentation. How do we empower people and make him level up our employees and the organization?
Yeah, so there's a nice, going back to the 80s, Shoshana Zuboff has a classic book in the Age of the Smart Machine. And she has a framework in there where talking about applying IT in 3 different ways: automating, informating, and transforming. And what the research pretty much shows is the ones that deliver lasting value are the ones that are transformative, change what's possible in the business. And I think companies that are just going for the efficiency play, which Wall Street loves because that's going to be short-term results, will lose in the long run because it assumes that the business conditions are not going to change. It assumes people aren't going to want more high-touch services. It assumes people are not going to want to bank differently when they have options. So if you just go to optimizing your business model now for efficiency, you'll be out of business in 3 to 5 years, I think. Because I don't know what the time, I don't want to put time frames on it because things change, all sorts of things can change. But I think the ones that are going to succeed are going to figure out how to take the savings and then reinvest it back into their employees, reinvest it back into new lines of business, reinvest it to becoming an AI forward company, not just paving the digital cow paths. And that, if you're using AI just for efficiency, you're paving the cow paths. You're doing things the way they've always been done. slap an AI on top of it. And that is fine for the short term. That will not win in the long term. And you can go historical data, whether it's agriculture, whether it's banking, whether it's telecom. All of these have examples of companies that have transformed and done work differently. We just forget about it because it's more on the 20 to 30 year time frame than the 3 to 5 year time frame. But I think things are moving faster now.
Yeah, I don't understand. By the way, I think a lot of the layoffs and other things, AI washing to a degree,
Yes.
They may not be hiring a lot of new people because they don't know what the hell's going on or how to prepare. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. Most of there's not a lot of companies.
Because you're not going to replace somebody. AI doesn't, it's not a robot sitting at a desk doing, you're not, it requires somebody to use it. It's a tool.
Yes. The one exception might be the tech companies, because again, when you're dealing with purely digital products, it's a different beast. But I've not run into any company that's figured out AI well enough to lay off one person yet. It's just, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of one-off usage. There's not a lot of sharing best practices. The one exception was I got to interview the chief human relations officer of ServiceNow. So a tech company, they're definitely a step ahead. And so I do think sort of the big cloud providers are doing a lot here, but some of that will and won't translate to more traditional businesses. When you're dealing with the physical goods and people interaction, it doesn't scale always as well as when you're doing pure digital. So it's figuring it out, and that just takes time.
So it sounds like, based on what you're telling me, that what you wrote in the Tech Fallacy is even more applicable, or it's writ large now with AI. But You tell me. So AI is promised to transform a modern workplace. Is the challenge here for a company still cultural, managerial, not just technical? What you see happening to work?
Yeah.
Judgment, culture.
Yeah. So I think I think it is much more, organizational is probably a better word, I think, than cultural, because I would also put structure. I'm actually less concerned about AI replacing entry-level work than I am it replacing middle managers, because that's where I'm more concerned about AI replacing middle managers than entry-level work. Because it's middle managers that primarily did information exchange from higher levels of the company to lower levels of the company. And that is stuff that can be automated. So I do see flatter organizations. I do probably see smaller organizations as a general rule, but I see more of them. And I see us developing new goods and services that we don't even know exist yet. And so, I think it is cultural, organizational, strategic. I don't want to say the tech is easy, because right now the tech is moving so fast that it's hard to deal with all the other stuff. But I think that is why I think this change is really going to take a 10-year time frame for us to adapt to it.
If you were consulting with a company, if they haven't adopted AI yet, what is step 1 or 2?
Yeah, well, so I would go back to what I talked about before. Step 1 is find that coalition of the willing. You got 30 people already experimenting with AI in your company. You have 30 people, what's the right number? I don't know. You have 30 people that are already super users, whether you know it or not. Get those people out of the shadows, get them talking to each other and sharing best practices, and then use it to the organization. The other thing I think that's really important, there's a lot of fear out there about AI replacing jobs, and it's going to be critical to cultivate a sense of psychological safety where you're going to bring employees along, or they find very creative ways to resist and sabotage your efforts. So you have to create an environment where people feel free to experiment, where they're encouraged to experiment, where they're rewarding for learning new things. Now, the good news, and this is, I think, something that I'm not hearing enough of out there, is unlike previous technologies, the operating system of generative AI is English. Everybody can talk to it in an LLM. Everybody can learn how to get better information, better prompt. It's not rocket science. But because it is so flexible, and we haven't given adequate training, because there's not enough people that know how to use these tools well enough. But what I'm seeing here at UGA, so I did my next LinkedIn post is going to be about, and I don't know if it's the next one or somewhere down the road, where I'm getting the most personal reward is in the second order effects of my education. These examples where I'm teaching students and they supercharge, that is very gratifying to me. What's more interesting and more rewarding is when those people go teach their colleagues. And I'm seeing that over and over again, where these people are learning how to use it in their job and they say, I can do that. I can help other people. So it's basically if I'm consulting a company, and I do, start with that coalition of the willing. I would spend 3 months, 6 months with them to make sure they're on the right track, and then let those people go out in the organization and start user groups of their own. Because I do think once they're up and running, one, they see the potential and their eyes, we feel like our brains are being broken. They have that experience too. Like the possibilities are just endless, and they can start teaching their colleagues. And a lot of times it's more receptive coming from colleagues who couldn't do it 6 months ago than from Professor Kane, who's been studying digital transformation for 20 years. That threat of, or that, oh, he's been doing this for 20 years. He knows more than I do. I don't know about construction. I don't know about financial services. I don't know about all of these industries that they have more knowledge in. I can teach them the AI knowledge they need to succeed in their business. And then once they learn it, then give them the opportunity to teach others. That's sort of the secret sauce.
What's coming to my mind, it sounds like one of the not only better applications of AI, but maybe the easiest in a sense. Because where do I take this machine intelligence and I have all these parts of my business? Where do I apply it?
Yep.
And I think they're thinking IT infrastructure, and it's like, whoa. If you could just give it to the employees to start and then open up, amplify their skill sets, right? As they learn it, that is going to bubble up and then seep across the organization to then improve those other areas. So in other words, you start with a human because those are your key assets, right? And make them smarter, more powerful, give them assistance, and let them do their jobs better. That will lift the entire organization. You'll find the areas then next that you need to apply.
Yes.
Am I?
Now, the one thing I would add to that, while you're doing that, make sure you consider what the governance structures are going to be on top of that.
I got a question right here on my list about governance. So let's go there, because what's the minimal viable governance structure for AI at work? They need governance, but not bureaucracy, right? They need approved tools, data boundaries, standards.
Yep. And so I think it starts with education. These are the appropriate uses. These are not the appropriate uses. One company I've been working with, I have
just standard rule set. Standard rule set. HR manual.
Yeah, you don't use this. You don't put this information. And I told them, I said, never do this. And they said, the subject matter expert in there said, well, we've actually decided, we've made the business decision that's an acceptable risk for us to put that information into AI. I'm like, great, you've made that decision. You've thought about it. That's what needs to happen. And the problem is, unless the senior leadership also has and understands, so many just outsource and say, IT deal with it, lower level people deal with it. I firmly believe C-suite needs to have a working knowledge of generative AI in order to effectively lead there. They don't have to, they should, because it's going to supercharge them too. But unless they see what's possible, they're not going to be able to say, ooh, here are the fears I have. And I don't have a generic set of governance, because the risk tolerance is going to differ by organization, by industry, health. Interesting. I was listening to a podcast today where, talking about how AI is actually one of the most widely and quickly adopted tools in healthcare ever, because doctors are seeing the value and they can use it to supercharge their expertise. My dissertation is in electronic medical records.
That's happy to hear, by the way. I'm happy to hear that. I'm diagnosing my own shit.
Yes.
Before I
and so now with the doctor, you diagnose your own shit and you go ask the doctor, is my diagnosis correct? Or what do you think about my diagnosis? And they'll say, well, that's really, you don't live in South Sudan, so that's probably not, going to be.
I tell it to write up a summary I can give my doctor.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I love about healthcare is my doctor does the ambient listening, the note taking, so she doesn't have to type in my stuff. So she can look me in the eye, we can have a conversation, and she doesn't have to be worrying about the electronic medical record system. Somewhat paradoxically, you're seeing with healthcare and with financial services, you're seeing a more quicker AI adoption because they're regulated and they know what the rules are. So it's much easier for them to get to that governance quicker, because there's a clear set of rules.
They already went.
They have a template to start from. Whereas if you're in consumer goods, what are the don't kill people with your product, but that's about it.
They don't know what the lawsuits would be.
They don't know. Yes, exactly.
I think banks are also, right, because of the regulations. They are
absolutely. Okay. And so you're seeing financial services doing a lot more of this because we know what can get.
So with solid governance structures already in place,
can adapt them much easier. Yes,
that's
because they know what the rules. So if I ever go into an organization and do sort of a large scale upskilling, that would be part of it as well, working with the senior leadership to make sure the governance structures are in place. So you can supercharge your employees without there's always going to be some risks, but there's risks in the internet. It's employee could easily email confidential documents to the press or to a competitor. Like it's always been there. So you can't bulletproof everything.
I'm hearing horror stories. Well, plus I'm also seeing it firsthand and this is Claude specific, but where something it's about to deploy, go from staging to production.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, it's going to expose all the code to the public. And that's got to be checked. So it's,
and Anthropic's guilty of it themselves. They leaked Claude code, source code to the internet, and it got out there. So it's a problem. Risk, breaches are going to happen.
It's problems we've had, but now,
and it's much faster.
Yeah. What about a manager? What does a good manager actually do here, in your opinion? Do they just model use cases?
I think so.
Set expectations and enforce the boundaries, or just encourage experimentation? I
think it's encourage smart experimentation. Give employees the time to experiment. Google had the famed 20% time where they gave their employees back in the day 20% of their time to work on passion projects. Well, that never worked because everybody said I already have too much to do in my day job. I don't have 20% to give it. But carving out a little bit of time, is it one day a week, or is it half a day a week? Is it 2 hours? Where you have employees the manager gets the employees together and say, hey, let's this. And I am practicing what I'm preaching. So we're going to have a group over the summer of my faculty where we're going to get together once a week, have a Zoom call, and we're just going to share, okay, who has done cool stuff with AI this week and what is it? And we're going to share the things we've all learned. I'm going to record it on Zoom. I will turn it into a LinkedIn article and share it with, because we're educators, so that other people can learn from what we're talking about. And we're going to just keep learning together. And those who want to do this we're going to have fun with it. And those that don't, pay attention at home or don't. I'm not going to force anybody into this, but I think if I can now the problem is I've got too many faculty who want to participate. I'm hoping it's like a couple people are doing it a lot, the others, because we'll never have time to talk about all the stuff we're doing. But, so we've got 15 faculty that are going to get together over the summer and just talk about agentic AI and how it should be applied to education and what we're learning as a result. And I learned things this morning. Like I'm out. Now I'm at the point, I don't know if this is where I've really gone down the rabbit hole, Larry. I'm now on my walk with my dog. I'm now talking to my AI and say, hey, how would I approach, I'm thinking about this harness engineering stuff. How would I approach some of these managing these information and what's the best approach and I walk in, my dog comes in the house. My wife says, I hold up my finger, hang on. And so can you output this to a clean prompt that I can use when I get back to the office? And she thinks I'm crazy, but then I'm practicing what I preach so we have a house on Cape Cod. We're going there for the summer. And I've bought every member of my family now a Claude Pro account. They are now subscribed. And then I've invited the neighbors to participate along. And we're just going to sit down and we're going to figure out how to use it in our own lives for what we want to do it on. Because
you're a true teacher.
Because all I can do is make sure my kids and my students have the skills they need. I can't change the workplace. I can't change layoffs. I do know people will still be hired, and the people who will be hired have the AI skills. And I can just make sure the people I care about have the skills that they need to survive.
Yeah, I just wrote about this where I said, it's not you against AI, it's you against someone else using AI. Against is the wrong framing, but when it comes
to the old joke about the two guys trying to outrun the bear, and one of them puts his shoes on. He says, "You really think you're going to outrun the bear?" Says, "No, I just need to be able to outrun you." And so that's where we're in, and that's all I can do.
Tell me what you're seeing with jobs and new graduates. Is it as bleak as I'm hearing?
No, at least I don't think so. I'm not. There's a lot of anxiety.
They're saying new graduates can't find jobs.
There's certainly structural changes happening. And there was a ton of anxiety in my fall class about jobs amongst the students. But this semester, most of my students had jobs lined up. Now, I happen to collect a lot of honor students and a lot of, my class is in demand. So I attracted a lot of good
Look,
students.
by the way, historically, when I graduated, there wasn't that many jobs when I graduated.
I want to see the data. We collect pretty relentless data on this. I think it is most likely going to be, in the, when I came on board, I think we had my department had a 95, 98% placement rate within 3 weeks or 6 months of graduation. I think we're going to be in that similar, probably closer to 90. So we'll drop 5 percentage points. So significant, but not catastrophic. What percentage of those are going back to graduate school is lumped in together? So are people going back to graduate school? I don't know the answer to that question, but it certainly is not as bleak as I was expecting.
Okay. So more positive than...
Well, at least not as negative.
Are the graduates and the students themselves have a higher level of anxiety around all this?
They certainly did. Yeah.
Okay.
In the fall. And now my students coming out of this class, I think, again, should I take that job at Bain? Or should I go work for a startup or do my thing? Yeah. I mean, is this the best route for me to maximize my career?
I do think there's, if it hasn't already happened, there's a proliferation of companies, business startups, one person back to the merchant days because you have the tools, a burst of creativity. So you sound, just from the sentiment I'm gathering of our conversation, enthused, excited. The energy coming from you is very positive.
And frustrated, because I don't think the university is changing fast enough. I don't think they understand how to change fast enough. I'm not sure it's a willingness. I think it's just a lack of understanding.
What would be the first thing, if you had a magic wand, that they would need to do to change? Or
exactly the same model I just described will work in education too. Get together super users. Yep. Figure out how to use it, share best practices, and bring everybody else. This is what hasn't changed. It is, if you go back to Rogers' diffusion of technology in the 60s, you have the early adopters, you have the middle, you have the laggards. The early adopters are going to want to experiment. They're going to figure stuff out. Once you can prove the business use case, whether that's at a business or a university or whatever, then the middle is going to want to come along because they see where the value is going to happen. And then the laggards will figure out what to do with when we get there. But we can worry about that later.
Generally, overall, what as to our future, our AI future, are you positive, negative? It depends.
A good professor would always say depends, because I think there are some unknowns out there. Politics, there's certainly some sentiment pushing back against data centers. Are we going to see a situation where the not in my backyard, regulations really slow it down? That's the one I'm perhaps most concerned about. How quickly do companies adapt? There's going to be some pain, I think, in the short term as we figure this stuff out. I would say more bearish in the short term, bullish in the long term. But then, I also thought in the fall, agentic AI wasn't going to be a thing, and I was wrong. So I think there are some very serious, and China is another issue. That's clearly a competitive environment there. Is compute going to be able to keep up with demand? The technology works. Is there going to be enough of it to work? And so DeepSeek released a new model this past week, the Chinese AI company, and it's not as good as our frontier models, but it is 10 times more efficient. And is that what needs to happen? So there are a lot of questions out there about these things that I think are still very unknown. That excites me because I'm one that goes figure things out and help with those decisions. So I'm feeling good because I'm feeling pretty valuable right now. But what the future is going to bring, I think positive, certainly possible. And I'm probably more optimistic than most, but that's not, I'm not wholeheartedly optimistic. I think there's some real genuine challenges. And then how do we, the societal questions, how do we, the tax code is there's an economist at MIT who talks about, we've historically given preferential tax treatment to capital investments. And he argues we've now gone the other way, that we really should give we should be taxing capital and not taxing labor because we want people to have jobs. And so some of these things are there are a lot of societal issues that I think are potential, and how we work it out is not clear to me.
Do you see any emotional issues? I'm thinking of shy young people falling in love with chatbots. I mean, there's always going to be some version of this, but
Yeah.
is this a thing at all with students?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think
Okay.
it makes for good stories, and I think they're always one-off crazy stories.
And that's why I'm trying to cut through the
Yeah.
the.
I haven't seen students not going out drinking on a Thursday night and Friday night and spending time with friends just to stay home with their chatbot girlfriend. I've seen zero examples of that.
One of my worries about AI is this illusion of consciousness, that these things are imbued with more life than that's what's there. It's just code running across data centers.
Yeah.
It's empty in that regard. I don't worry that it's going to become conscious. I worry that it's going to seem like it is. And
what I am more concerned about is looking at the Facebook model, where they engineered their algorithms to keep people on the platform. I'm more worried about that, about the unethical design that really tries to just not make people better, but just take their attention and their money.
Yeah.
And these can be really powerful tools that can learn. But that's what happened with Facebook, right? I mean, it's AI, it's algorithms. Yeah. It's already happened. It takes our attention, sucks us in with fake people. They're all posted by individuals, but those personas are fake.
It's a persona, yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry, this has been great. This was exactly what I was hoping for, and the things that I wanted to find out about you. You were eloquent on those topics. This is great. Jerry, thanks, man.
My pleasure.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, do share it with your friends and on your social platforms. Big thanks to Sam Williams, my audio guy, and the beautiful bumper music you're hearing is Michael Petrovich's Bella Luna. For all my show notes or resource links, visit LarryWeeks.com, and we will talk again soon.